Hello everyone and welcome to Registrar Corp's webinar entitled eCTD Requirements for Drug Master Files. My name is Bracy Parr, a regulatory specialist in the Food Safety Department at Registrar Corp and today's moderator. The presentation portion of the webinar will last approximately 45 minutes. We anticipate having around 10 minutes to respond to your questions at the end. If we run out of time, we are also happy to respond to your questions by email. You may submit a written question at any time during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature at the top center of your screen. A recorded copy of this presentation will be sent to all registrants as well as a PDF copy of the slides. I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Melissa Sayers holds a Master of Science degree in Oceanography from Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. She joined Registrar Corp in 2012 and has specialized in drug electronic submissions from drug establishment registration, product listings to electronic common technical document submissions for drug master file, and abbreviated new drug application submissions. She has also assisted companies with complying with the registration requirement for human drug outsourcing facilities, self-identification submissions as required under the Generic User Fee Amendment, or GDUFA. I'd like to go ahead and begin. Melissa?
Thank you, Bracy, for the introduction. Master files are not required by FDA. Filing of a master file is optional. Master files are submissions submitted to FDA in support of a pre-market application that has been submitted to FDA. FDA reviews the master file only in support of the submission under review. However, it is important to note that the master file itself will not be approved or disapproved. The submission that is referencing the master file is the submission that will either be approved or disapproved by FDA. And it is important that the information in the master file aids that submission appropriately. A master file is not to be used as a marketing tool that shows your company has complied with FDA, nor is it a replacement for other FDA requirements, such as a product approval, registration and listing, or export certificate application. Please note that each center handles a master file differently. For example, as we will discuss shortly, Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, commonly referred by CDER, will be requiring drug master files to be submitted in electronic format in the near future with stricter guidelines in formatting and structure than compared to the Center of Devices and Radiological Health, known as CDRH, who will continue to accept a medical device master file by mail in paper format. Our focus today will be drug master files that are submitted to CDER. When conversing among the master file community, it is important to understand some terminology that describes the different roles people or companies may have in a master file submission. The term holder is the person or company that will be responsible for the content within a master file to FDA, and may also be the company that submits the file to FDA. Now, even though FDA does not require a company to have an agent to represent a master file, FDA does encourage, in particular, foreign companies to have an agent that resides in the U.S. that will represent a master file holder and assist with communication with the foreign company. For example, Registrar Corp is an agent for many of our foreign clients, and when we receive an acknowledgement letter from FDA confirming receipt of a new DMF, as well as any other communications relating to that DMF, We forward that documentation to our client. To expand on what was stated previously about master files, specifically, drug master files are used to provide confidential, detailed information about facilities, processes, or articles used in the manufacturing, processing, packaging, and storing of human drugs. Drug master files are generally created to allow a party other than the holder of the DMF to reference material without disclosing that party's contents of the file. FDA reviews the information submitted in a DMF when it is referenced in a drug application. The information contained in a drug master file may be used to support a pre-market submission, another master file, export application, or amendments or supplements to any of these. Drug master files are commonly used to support an investigational new drug application, known as INDs, new drug applications, which are referred to as NDAs, and abbreviated new drug applications, known as ANDAs, or generic drug applications. Drug master files are not required by FDA, nor are DMFs approved by FDA. Filing a DMF is optional. However, many companies opt to file a DMF because it allows a contract manufacturer to submit the information once to FDA and identifies the holders of a drug application to reference the contract manufacturer's DMF versus submitting the manufacturing process and chemical information in each drug application multiple times. Traditionally, there were 5 types of DMFs that FDA accepted. Type 1 is no longer accepted or maintained. It was used to contain information about the manufacturing facilities, specific people, and specific procedures. Now this information may be provided either in a Type 2, Type 3, or a Type 4, or if not possible under those 3 types, then a Type 5 may be filed. Type 2 is for drug substance intermediate, and material used in their preparation or drug product. An active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is referred as an API, is an example of a drug substance. An API is the key ingredient that performs the function of the drug product that by treating, preventing, or mitigating a disease through chemical action. Type 3 is the material used in packing a drug product. This may be plastic bottles, trays, ampules, or aluminum cans for inhalers are some examples. Type 4 is intended for ingredients in a drug product that its purpose is for excipients, flavoring, coloring, or materials used in their preparation. Type 5. As specified in the regulations, DMF holders wishing to submit a Type 5 DMF must obtain clearance from the FDA, accept information regarding manufacturing sites, facilities, operating procedures, and personnel for sterile manufacturing plants. Can be filed as a Type 5 DMF without clearance. Type 2 can be a large category of unfinished drug products, such as intermediates, active pharmaceutical ingredients, and bulk-filled drug products for further manufacturing. Included on this slide are 3 examples. When deciding if your product can go into one DMF or will require multiple DMFs, separate DMFs should be submitted for drug substances and drug products. However, for a type 3, you may include multiple products if the packaging only has a slight variation. Here's an example. Your company is manufacturing a variety of plastic bottles, and the manufacturing process is the same among the different plastic materials. You could file one type 3 DMF that includes all the variations of plastic bottles. For a type 4 DMF, these contain flavor ingredients used in drug products, as well as excipients and coloring. If you have multiple flavors that use the same protocols, you may file one DMF. However, if the manufacturing procedures are different, you should file a separate DMF. Just to reiterate, for type 5 DMF, DMF holders wishing to submit a type 5 DMF must obtain clearance from FDA prior to submitting, okay? A clearance is not required if the submission to be submitted in a type 5 DMF is regarding a manufacturing site, facilities, operating procedures, and personnel for sterile manufacturing, okay? The key word here is sterile for the different types of manufacturing facilities. When writing a drug master file, there are some key points to keep in mind. A type 2 or 4 usually includes a chemistry section that will provide the chemical structure, such as an API or excipient. All DMFs usually also include the manufacturing procedures and controls set to ensure the quality of its products. Validation protocols should also be included when appropriate. If toxicological information is available, it should also be provided in the DMF. FDA wants to ensure that there are no interactions that could cause harm to the public when using the drug. Why file a DMF? This will keep your proprietary information confidential with FDA. For example, a company that is the holder of an ANDA is filing its application to FDA. An ANDA holder must include information about its company, the quality of the drug product, manufacturing processes, non-clinical data, such as toxicology and clinical studies that show that the drug product is just as safe and effective as the new drug. By filing a DMF, for example, you, as the manufacturer of an active pharmaceutical ingredient, would not be required to provide this proprietary information directly to the ANDA holder, but submit the information as a Type 2 DMF to FDA. Only the reviewer at FDA will have access to both the ANDA submission and the DMF, and will keep your information confidential from the ANDA holder. Any deficiencies that are identified in the review will be expressed to the DMF holder as well as the ANDA holder. There was a major change last year for applicants for drug applications of NDAs, ANDAs, and BLAs. The same change will apply to DMF. Starting May 5th this year, 2018, DMFs will be required to submit new applications, annual reports, adverse event reporting, letters of authorization request, supplements, amendments, and any other reason to submit an update for an application will be required to be submitted in electronic common technical document format known as eCTD, which you are familiar with or may be familiar after this presentation. eCTD organizes information into a standardized backbone for more efficient review of drug data. Paper submissions will no longer be accepted for DMF this upcoming May 5th. Okay? FDA has stated that waivers or exemptions will not be granted for DMF submissions. The good news is FDA is not requiring resubmissions of paper submissions into eCTD. You may keep your existing DMFs in paper format. You may also opt to submit a new DMF or updates in paper up until May 5th. So why is FDA requiring eCTD for DMF? One of the reasons is transmission of electronic file is faster than, say, by using traditional mail carrier. When shipping to FDA, it takes different time frames, anywhere between a few business days to a few weeks for FDA to receive the file, depending on the shipping method. When it arrives at FDA's mail center, FDA then has to deliver it to the department that may review the DMF. FDA takes between 2 to 3 weeks to send a letter by mail acknowledging receipt of a new DMF paper submission. When a new DMF is transmitted through FDA's electronic submission gateway system, FDA will receive the submission within 24 hours, and FDA will confirm by sending a letter within 10 days of receipt. So you can use a turtle method by postal mail, or proceed using a more rapid method by electronic means. When it is time-sensitive matter, as in the case of answering a deficiency letter, you can complete your response within a short time span, if needed, by using eCTD. When a DMF is submitted by paper, the FDA reviewer has to send a request to the document room to have the DMF delivered for review. Imagine reviewing a large submission, and on top of the annual reports, amendments, and various letters of authorization submitted throughout the years, all in paper. It can be time-consuming and not easy to locate specific information. However, with eCTD, FDA can view all the letters of authorization, amendments, and annual reports, in addition to the initial submission, all on one screen when it is submitted in eCTD. This allows FDA to use search terms to instantly find specific sections within the DMF. FDA can review a submission much more quicker and thoroughly with eCTD. Also, by using this structure, it allows FDA to view both drug applications, such as a new drug application, and a drug master file in the same format. Currently, DMFs can be submitted in paper without using the CTD structure. And this has the potential to make the review process difficult for the new drug application holder who submitted an eCTD that is seeking approval. Now, let's imagine your customer has invested millions of dollars working on a new drug to be approved by FDA. Your customer is referencing your DMF. However, it has only been submitted by paper. When FDA is reviewing your customer's application, and the reviewer must wait to have your paper DMF delivered to their building, you can imagine how much this may delay the review process for your customer's new drug application. Now, imagine being that FDA reviewer who has just received the DMF that has submitted in multiple amendments and annual reports through the years. Trying to navigate among all that paper is not only tedious and cumbersome, but also time-consuming. Now, imagine after May 5th, and you have started to submit amendments and annual reports in eCTD. Now, FDA not only has a large amount of paper to review, but also has to cross-reference with the information submitted in eCTD. It just got even more complicated for the FDA reviewer. the process for the NDA to be approved is prolonged. If the DMF is resubmitted in eCTD with the most current procedures and information, this should help expedite the review for the NDA. The sooner the drug product is approved, the sooner your customer can market the drug. Now you have a happy customer whose approval was not delayed because of your paper DMF. So by thinking about this process in the eyes of the companies that will be referencing your DMF, it is no doubt beneficial to resubmit your DMF in eCTD. Okay, so even though FDA may not require a DMF to be resubmitted, we understand now the benefits to resubmitting your paper DMF to FDA in eCTD. Now, you are ready to do the conversion. However, it is important to emphasize some key points about the process. Please note that FDA does not want every historical piece of information to be submitted in a resubmission of a DMF. It should be a complete submission with the most accurate and current information. For example, you would not include every cover letter from every annual report in your resubmission. You would only include a cover letter explaining that this is a resubmission and if there are any changes since your last submission on file with FDA. In addition, you would only include the manufacturing processes that are currently in use and not processes that have been discontinued. Before a DMF can be converted into eCTD, it will first need to be formatted into Common Technical Document, known as CTD, without the E in the beginning. CTD format is set by the International Council for Harmonization, known as ICH, to standardize regulatory submissions for drug applications by standardizing their headers. FDA has resources that provide the headers for the various sections of CTD and what type of content should be provided. Here are some links to some of those guidance documents. This format consists of 5 modules. Module 1 is administrative information. Each region, such as the United States, Canada, and Europe, will have its own structure of headers for Module 1. The content provided in Module 1 should be specific to that region. Module 2 contains summaries of documentation provided in Modules 3, 4, or 5. For example, a section in Module 2 will contain summary of a corresponding section in Module 3. Module 3 contains technical information that supports the quality of the product. This section is the most common module with the drug master files. This is where descriptions of the manufacturing process and process controls will be provided, as well as specifications and analytical procedures. Module 4 contains the non-clinical study reports, such as pharmacological, pharmacokinetics, and toxicological evaluations. And Module 5 contains the clinical study reports. This module is not as common for DMFs. All DMFs must have a Module 1, and most DMF types will have documentation in Module 2 and 3. Let's take a look at these modules. All DMF submissions must include Module 1. However, all sections may not be required. Here are some examples of sections in Module 1 that you may provide information. The bold font are the sections that may contain a document. Every submission must contain a cover letter that summarizes the purpose of the submission. This will go under Section 1.2. The Statement of Commitment is also included in Section 1.2, as well as the Generic Drug User Fee Cover Sheet for a Type 2 DMF that is referenced in a generic drug application. Section 1.3 is the administrative section that will include information when there is a change in address or corporate name for the contact, sponsor, or applicant, or if the contact or agent changes, then this information would also be included in this section. Section 1.4 is a section where authorization to reference the drug master file is provided. Section 1.4.1 is a section where letters of authorization, commonly known as LOAs, will be inserted. The statement of right to reference will be inserted into Section 1.4.2, and a list of authorized persons to incorporate by reference will be in Section 1.4.3. Section 1.12 is a section for other communication. One of the common documents, an environmental assessment for Section 1.12, will be placed under Section 1.12.14. For products that have labeling, such as an active pharmaceutical ingredient, labeling can be provided in Section 1.12.2. There are other sections to Module 1, such as an annual report or meeting request. We provide guidance to our clients for these sections as needed, depending on the submission type. Before proceeding to Module 2, there are two key terms, drug substance and drug product, that needs to be defined. A drug substance means an active ingredient that is intended to furnish pharmacological activity or other direct effect in a diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease, or to affect the structure or any function of the human body, but does not include intermediate use in the synthesis of such ingredients. A drug product means a finished dosage form, for example, tablet, capsule, or solution that contains a drug substance, generally but not necessarily in association with one or more other ingredients. Now we will proceed to Module 2. As I mentioned earlier, Module 2 should include summaries of the content in the drug master file. The CTD structure differs between a drug substance and a drug product. If your product is a drug substance, you would use the S section in Module 2. If your product is a finished product that contains multiple components, then you would use the P section in Module 2. It may not always be clear which section to use for Type 3 or Type 4 DMF. The S section on the left should be used if your product is a single component, such as a plastic bottle. However, if there are multiple components to your product, then it may be more appropriate to use the P section on the left, such as an assembled container closure system that has a glass bottle with a plastic cap. Here is a breakdown of Module 2.3.F. Now, notice that there are some parts that have subsections, such as S1. General information has 3 subsections. These subsections will contain documents. Please note, not all S sections have subsections. S5, reference standards of materials, and S6, container closure system, do not have subsections. S5 and S6 will contain documents. Okay, so we have these number outlines with titles. I'm sure you're asking yourself, how do I take this information and use it to format my DMF that is currently not in CTD format into this CTD format? That is a great question. you may need to reorganize your content in your DMF to fit the CTD structure. We recommend looking over the guidance documents issued by FDA and International Council for Harmonization, ICH, and become familiar with the different sections. For our clients, we provide guidance documents and information applicable to their DMF type. When reviewing this information, try to keep in mind how your material may fit into the different sections. Then, review your submission and start assigning different sections with the section numbers. CTD format is simply using headers in a specific numbering system when writing a submission. Module 3 will have a similar breakdown to Module 2. There will be an S section for drug substances and a P section for drug products. Module 3 has a regional information section. In this section, when applicable, such as a Type 2 DMF, there should be at least one sample of an executed batch record in 3.2R. Even though there is a method validation package section in Module 3.2R, FDA advises that methods validation information should be included in either the S or P section in Module 3. For a drug substance, please use section 3.2S.4.3. For a drug product, please use section 3.2P.5.3. Now, even though methods validation may not be provided in 3.2R, you may include comparability protocols in this section. Usually, DMFs will include Modules 1, 2, and 3. Modules 4 are included when a company has toxicological information, such as Type 3 DMF. A DMF holder of a Type 3 may have a container that has run tests to ensure that that container will not affect the drug product. Module 5 is used when there is clinical data. The modules 4 and 5 may not be as common as modules 1 through 3. However, it is an option if needed. If you are manufacturing a product in different formulations or specifications, you may submit them in one DMF. For example, your company is manufacturing various plastic bottles for a Type 3. Then you may treat each as a drug product using the P section in Module 2 and 3. And CTD allows you to separate the different formulas using the same header structure, but the formulation will be included in the header name as shown above. You may repeat this as needed. When structuring your Type 3 or Type 4 DMF, that mixtures, you'll want to keep the following in mind. In P1, you should provide a summary of each chemical, flavor, part, or material of construction of your product. Each will be considered a component of your product. P2 is typically not necessary for these types of DMFs, and that is why this section has a line through it. P3 should include the manufacturing name, address, and a brief summary of the manufacturing process of your product. P4 should include the specifications of the individual components that you named in P1. P5 should include the controls of the finished product, including extraction studies. Depending on the test performed in P5, you may include reference standards in P6. And the container used to ship the product should be described in P7. Stability information should be summarized in P8 to support recommended storage conditions and time. For Type 5 DMF that are sterile processing and biotech facilities, you will want to include a 3.2A1 section that describes the facilities and equipment used in your manufacturing processes. Note that if the same procedure is used across multiple facilities, you may file one DMF. However, if the same procedures are not used, you will need to file a separate DMF per process, naming the facilities that will use that procedure. FDA does not have some resources available to guide you in what type of information will be helpful to FDA in a Type 5 DMF. As you obtain customers who wish to reference your facility in a new drug application as a manufacturer, you'll want to include a letter of authorization in your DMF and provide a copy of that letter of authorization to the applicant holder, who will do the same in its NDA application. This will notify FDA that you have granted access for FDA to reference your DMF in the new drugs review process. You can also withdraw authorization at any time. Please note that you need to communicate to the NDA holder that you will be doing that and when it is completed. The NDA holder may need to find a new manufacturer to include in its application, and companies who file new drug applications have spent a lot of money to have the application reviewed and approved by FDA. Even after approval, the holder has the responsibility to make sure the information is current and accurate. This means that if you change the procedures in manufacturing, depending on how significant of a change, it may require an amendment to be filed. You will need to notify the holder that you are making changes. Registrar Corp will compile the information we have submitted for your DMF into an annual report and send it to you to review and make any further changes. If there are no changes, this can be submitted to FDA to show that you have been reviewed and updated your DMF. If you are no longer manufacturing product or no longer wish to maintain the DMF, a request to close the DMF may instead be submitted to FDA. FDA has available on its website an Excel file that can be downloaded that shows a list of DMFs that are active, inactive, or closed. A DMF is active as long as the DMF is kept up to date. Granted, FDA does not require an annual report every year, but after a certain time frame, if no amendments or annual reports are filed, FDA may either mark it as inactive or closed by FDA. An inactive DMF can be reactivated by submitting an annual report. However, a closed DMF must be resubmitted in its entirety for FDA to update its status to active. So as you can see, it is important to keep your DMF up to date to keep it active and accessible to drug applicant holders to reference your DMF in their submissions. Registrar Corp handles a lot of the IT components of the conversion from CTD to eCTD. If you have not submitted your DMF previously to FDA, we will obtain a pre-assigned application number on your behalf. Once we receive the DMF from our clients in CTD format, we will split the document into the appropriate sections to insert into the eCTD backbone. FDA requires that all text can be searched, so it is important, whenever possible, to type your DMF in Word. We are happy to convert Word formatted files into PDF that will be in the proper format for eCTD. Once the submission is compiled, we will validate and submit your DMF through FDA's electronic submission gateway. We will provide a copy of the eCTD file for your records, as well as any acknowledgement letters we receive from FDA. Additionally, we will inform you of any correspondence we receive directly from FDA. Registrar Corp can assist you with filing a new DMF in eCTD. However, we may assist you with filing your DMF in paper format as long as it is completed and received by FDA prior to May 5th. We are happy to assist you with an existing DMF that you want to maintain with FDA. We are happy to help with converting your DMF from CTD to eCTD. Even though FDA does not require an agent, we are happy to help to be your agent, especially for foreign companies where there may be a language barrier or a time zone issue. We have offices around the world to assist with communication. Please keep in mind, though, that your DMF must be in English, and your technical person must be able to provide the information in English. FDA does not accept any other languages. If your DMF has been inactivated, we can assist with reactivating the DMF. We also assist with filing master files with Health Canada. As an agent for your master file to Health Canada, we assist as we do for DMF filings to FDA. Unlike FDA, Health Canada has fees when new master files are submitted and updated. As agent, we assist with submitting these payments to Health Canada. You can also keep peace in mind that you do not have to pay for every LOA submission, administrative amendment, such as changes to company name or contact information throughout the year. Our agent fee includes these certain updates for a year. This service is renewed each year to keep maintaining your DMF.
Thank you, Melissa, for that great presentation. Again, I'd like to announce that we will be sending a recorded copy of this webinar and a PDF copy of the slides to all registrants. We're now going to open up for questions. Again, you can submit a question using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your screen. And I'd just like to say that any questions that we're not able to get to, we definitely can reply later on. I'm going to switch the slide to show our contact information. This is for our headquarters. We do have 19 international offices around the world, so if you do need assistance in a foreign language and in a different time zone, we are definitely set up to do that. Please get into contact with us and we'll provide your company with guidance. So for our first question today, we are going to go to Anna. How do we answer a deficiency letter through eCTD? Melissa?
Yes. So for a deficiency letter, there are many types of deficiency letters, and I'm just going to be very broad in this respect. When you have a deficiency letter from FDA, you have to follow the instructions that are set out by FDA in that letter, which means you want to be very careful to, a lot of times they'll tell you what to include in the subject line or the content. Make sure you include that in your cover letter. But you're going to have the eCTD software and the means to be able to put this submission together. But you'll need a cover letter, the supporting documentation. And depending on what your information is, you're going to have to be able to structure it into the CTD way. Now, if you're trying to do, response to something else submitted in paper, with CTD, you may just have a small section you want to provide information in, but you have to provide that whole section when you submit an eCTD, not just like the part of it, if you're replacing something that was submitted before. So because that's a very broad question, I can't exactly answer in specifics, but you just want to make sure you include the cover letter, a copy of the deficiency letter from FDA in your submission, as well as all your supporting documentation. Okay?
Thank you, Melissa. Our next question is, could we submit a DMF not related to GDUFA without including an LOA in the initial submission? The objective would be to appear in the DMF list to show availability of DMF to our potential customers. So a lot of acronyms there, Melissa. Could you break down this question for us, please?
Gladly. So GDUFA, that part just has to do, you're not going to have your DMF referenced in a generic drug application, which is an ANDA. So it seems that you're looking to have your master file to be referenced in some other type of application, whether that's an NDA, BLA, anything else. But the short answer to your question is yes, you can submit a DMF to FDA without a letter of authorization. When FDA receives the submission, usually when they get original submission in, depending on your method of submitting it, you'll get a letter from FDA confirming receipt of the submission. And FDA does not update its database very regularly for the DMF list. All that's going to show in that list is that your DMF is filed with FDA and that it is active. But if you need more information about, you can always contact us and we're happy to answer any additional questions related to that.
Thank you, Melissa. On to our next question. Is it advisable to submit a baseline DMF as first eCTD submission? Melissa, could you answer us there?
Yes. So I'm going to assume that the DMF was previously submitted in paper. When you do your first eCTD submission, if it's possible, if you can do the resubmission, great, because then that first sequence will be the original submission. I know I didn't talk about the term life cycle. When you submit eCTD submissions, there's an increasing number. It's called a sequence number, and each of those, increase as you submit. It is great if you can do that first resubmission as sequence. They like the submissions to start with 001. If you start with your first submission with that, that is awesome, but there's no requirement that it has to be resubmitted as the very first one. If you have a time sensitive now and you want to get your LOA in first and you're still working on your resubmission, that's okay. But we always recommend if you can do the conversion first, it just makes it a lot easier to read chronologically. Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next question is from Anna again, and it's, are hyperlinks within the DMF Type 2 mandatory? And I think this...
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think this relates to another question I'll rope in here. Someone else is asking, are bookmarks and links mandatory? Are links between sections mandatory? Or can you use just plain text? So could you answer three of our participants' questions there in one go?
Yes. So it's a great question. With eCTD, there are guidelines. FDA has a great guidance on PDF specifications. And when our clients come to us with their submissions, we worry about that headache. So links, bookmarks, table of contents, table of tables, table of attachments, all that fun stuff, you have to include when the document itself is more than like 4 or 5 pages. And the reason why it's required to do links and why it's required to have bookmarks is this is electronic submission. So in order to find things easier, these are tools for FDA to be able to review a submission much faster. It's not like you have a paper copy and you can just flip real quick and go through that for us or use the paper. But the electronic, these really just help the reviewer to be able to navigate submission. So as time goes on, it's really important to provide links to make it clear what you're referencing. There's also requirements on how to page the different documents. So they are required. They're very helpful to the reviewer. And if you haven't, like I was saying earlier in the presentation, the easier you can make it for the reviewer, the easier it's going to be for your customers when they have applications under review with FDA. And anything you can do to make it easier for them, you're going to have a much happier customer. Everyone's going to be happier all the way around.
Well, we certainly like when our clients have happy customers, because happy customers for you means, FDA regulations with which to comply, and that is our specialty. Another question here we have, could you explain how to submit a new letter of authorization after May 5th, 2018, when the DMF is in paper format? And that is a question from Amelie.
Okay. Okay. So an LOA submission. Just like when you would submit a paper submission, you include the cover letter, you include an LOA, and you submit it to FDA. So with the LOA and eCTD, if that's your first submission, you would include the cover letter and the LOA in the submission and submit it. It just would be submitted electronically. You would include your information. There's an administrative section that has to do with all the coding. And that's something the software usually helps with to get that all together. But the short answer is for an LOA, you would still just include your cover letter, your LOA letter, and put it into Module 1, and you can submit it to FDA. If your LOA is referencing certain sections, the guidances recommend that you include, and the guidance tells you exactly what to include depending on what your circumstances. You know, if you have volumes or page numbers in your paper submission, you would include that as your link in a way. You just write it out. You know, back in the days of when you had to write papers and you have to write footnotes or you write little things to reference, you're going to do that in your cover letter since you can't make an electronic link to the other section. Okay. The only other option maybe is if you want to include that other section in eCTD, but I'd really recommend, you know, if you're going to put stuff into eCTD, consider a resubmission where you have the whole DMF in one submission. That would probably be the best way to be able to manage your documents and see things and keep it better organized. Okay.
Thanks again, Melissa. Our next question is from Sonia. According to your explanation, could a first eCTD submission be a DMF amendment or an annual report?
It can be either. So when the deadline comes up, even right now, you can be doing it. Your first eCTD submission, it can be an annual report, it can be an amendment, it can be whenever you want to start doing an eCTD, you would provide the documents as you would if you were sending it through the mail. You know, I always recommend try to do your resubmission first, and it just makes things much easier on the coding end because in a perfect world, the way that eCTD was set up, the first submission would be the original submission, and there's things with the code where you have to relate to submission. It gets a little complicated. So even though you can technically do it for the coding side and the life cycle integrity of the submission, it's always good to try to do that first and then do your other submissions. But with a lot of DMFs, if they're really large, it's going to take time to do that. You can, in the meanwhile, submit your annual reports, then do your resubmission, and then link back through. Hopefully that answers your question. Basically, your first submission, eCTD, can be any submission type.
All right, we're going to take a couple more questions. So if anyone has some last-minute questions they want to pop in the Q&A, now is the time to do that. Melissa, when I submit an annual report, will FDA issue an acknowledgement letter like I did when I submitted an original submission?
Basically, no, not that same letter you receive in the mail. So when you do the original submission, you get this nice letter from FDA confirming receipt in that respect. When you submit an annual report, they don't send those letters by the mail. When you do submissions by eCTD, what's nice is, you know, paper, you send an annual report, you're not going to get anything. When you submit it through electronic means, the gateway has a system where you get a receipt, so it gives you date and time when you sent it. There's an acknowledgement file. It's a text base that confirms receipt. And then the third thing is a PDF file that comes from the center, at least for CEDAR. It's a really nice PDF. But it confirms receipt that's in the document room and that it's ready for review. And it has the DMF number. And it's just a really great record for your, you know, records and kind of like a peace of mind. So that's why eCTD is really nice, that you'll be able to have records that these have been received.
So it really seems like eCTD, it really behooves companies to move to that in terms of organization and just making regulatory compliance easier for them. We're going to take our last question here. Could you explain how to submit a new, oh, I'm sorry, this is a question we've already answered. My company has several DMFs on file with FDA. The company has recently had a name change. Who all needs to be notified of this change?
When the company that owns a DMF, this is referred as the DMF holder, changes its name, whether it's through a sale or simply a change in the company's name, the DMF holder must notify FDA. So if the holder changes its name, whether this represents a change in ownership or not, new letters of authorization should be submitted to the DMF. And copies also need to be sent to the authorized party. So it's going to be an amendment, and you will have to do some updating of your documents to make sure that change follows through. Okay.
Okay, and we're going to take our last question here now. What if I am unsure which header to use for a section of my DMF?
Great question. So Registrar Corp can provide information to help you in determining which header is most appropriate for your content. So many times, if it's something that may be, a couple of them that let you choose. And we help that way because there are so many headers. Modules 2 and 3, 4, 5 have loads of sections. So we help break that down for you so it's not so cumbersome and overwhelming.
Well, Thank you, Melissa, for answering that question. This concludes our presentation of eCTD requirements for drug master files. Thank you again to Melissa for sharing all of that knowledge and guidance with us. And thank you to our listeners. Again, we'll be sending out a recorded copy and the PDF version of the slides. And if you have any additional questions, we can be reached at info@registrarcorp.com, or you can go on our website for 24/7 assistance on using our live chat feature. All right, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.